The fourth industrial revolution, IR 4.0, began in 2016. By definition, originally it was creating a world in which virtual and physical systems of manufacturing cooperate with each other in a flexible way at a global level. However, it is not only about smart and connected machines and systems. Its scope is much wider, as we all know. Well, you may look at my tie. There's a keypad wired telephone, there's a fax machine, there's a desktop computer, and also a tablet. The evolution of technology and how we do business today has changed. Assalamualaikum and good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to day 3 of the Digital Ecosystem Week at the Malaysia Tech Month 2021. We're coming to you live virtually. My name is Hasro and I'll be your host for the day. It's my absolute pleasure to welcome here on this fine morning, 12th of August 2021. I'd like to thank all in attendance taking your time off today, this morning, to join us on this virtual platform to connect, even in these unprecedented times. So let me just bring you up to speed. The Malaysia Tech Month 2021, or MTM 2021, was launched by Malaysia Digital Economy Corporation throughout the month of August as a virtual month-long curation of electrifying digital and technology keynotes, workshops, discussion panels, and business matching sessions. It features distinguished groups of local and international industry speakers and investors to share their expert thoughts and experiences in the 4IR-driven digital economy. MTM will see exciting programs allowing the spotlight to be shown upon digital ecosystem leaders and creators, leading-edge companies as well as talents, enabling all stakeholders to discover new perspectives on domestic and global trends in artificial intelligence, drone tech, data analytics, fintech, Islamic fintech, e-commerce, agtech, creative games and animation, and the digital workforce. Before we move on, allow me to convey some housekeeping guidelines. Number 1, any questions to our speakers during the sessions, you may submit via the Q&A comment box below. Number 2, meeting and chat rooms for attendees are available for your networking convenience. Number 3, please complete the survey for each of the sessions as we strive to continuously serve you better. And number 4, should you require technical assistance, please chat with our admin on the virtual platform. Thank you. Without further ado, let's welcome the first panel discussion to start our morning on the partnership in digital economy, the way forward. Please join me in welcoming back the moderator of this session, Jasmine, the co-founder of EnGame and Secretary of Access Blockchain of Malaysia. Over to you, Jasmine.
Thank you so much, Hasro. Thank you so much for having me back. Good morning, everyone. How are you this morning? And I hope you all have had your cup of coffee and alert and paying attention, because we have a real treat to start your morning. We have 2 major powerhouses here to share their views on partnership and the digital ecosystem. So without further delay, let me first introduce a lady whom is greatly respected and somebody that I would aspire to being female in tech. Ms. Rama Sridhar. She's the Executive Vice President, Digital and Emerging Partnerships and New Payment Flows for Asia Pacific Mastercard, and she's in Singapore. Rama leads Mastercard's growth diversification efforts in the APAC region by maximizing the company's participation in digital ecosystems and creating strategic partnerships to modernize and digitize payment infrastructure. During her 30-year career spanning multiple industries and geographies, Rama has drawn on deep expertise to drive transformation. Her broad range of leadership roles has shaped her as a business head with the ability to scale ideas to their full potential and to steer corporates to execute new growth strategies. Rama is absolutely passionate about mentoring talent, especially women in tech. Named to Singapore's 100 Women in Tech list in 2020, Rama also sits on Singapore's Future Economy Council, is a director of the ASEAN Financial Innovation Network, and a member of the Forbes Business Development Council. Welcome, Rama. Good morning.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much for those very kind words. It's my absolute pleasure. And it's my absolute pleasure to participate in a panel which is the first one in the morning. The other ones are slightly more challenging, but hoping for a very engaging dialogue today.
I'm sure it will be. And the next person on this panel is none other than Mr. Ganesh Kumar Bangah, Executive Chairman of DotAsia Ventures in Bangah, and he sits in Malaysia. Mr. Ganesh Bangah is no stranger in the region. He is a serial entrepreneur. We know him from his MOL Global days. And today, with all these accolades from Ernst & Young Technology and Entrepreneur of the Year Award in 2012, and a lot more, long list. Today, his focus is on the commerce.asia and all-in-one e-commerce ecosystem. Ganesh grew the e-commerce .asia within 4 years to have a database of over 9 million SMEs across 7 countries with over 102,000 sellers that has sold over 3.4 billion worth of products just in 2020 alone. Welcome, Mr. Ganesh.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here.
So good to have the two of you here, Ganesh and Rama. And this is going to be a fun session because we have the mammoth of payment in Mastercard, and then we have the serial entrepreneur who has also built a payment company in Mr. Ganesh. First question, how do we navigate the shifting landscape of digital technology and understand the partnerships your business needs to win in the era of the fourth industrial revolution? Ms. Rama?
Sure. Firstly, when we talk about the fourth industrial revolution, every few years we introduce a ton of terms, and then by the time people normally understand what it really means, practically we're on to the next one. So let me take a minute to probably just talk about what does this all actually mean. The fourth industrial revolution in simple layman English to me just means that all the physical technology that we are used to touching, the digital technology that we've all experienced over the last couple of years perhaps, and the biological dimension of who we are, all of this comes together. And what is the challenges that it can help solve by coming together is really what we should think about when we talk about this fourth industrial revolution, right? So to my mind, when I think about this, there are a few technologies that instinctively we need to espouse or consume, whether it's cognitive computing, it's cloud analytics, or it's how do you bring together human expertise with robotics? How do you make sure that decentralized decision making and actions happen in a system environment? These are some of those shifts, if you like, that the fourth industrial revolution will actually bring about. Now, the technologies, whether it's artificial intelligence, big data, blockchain, Jasmine, this is something that's probably much better spoken about by you than me. But biotechnology, cryptocurrencies, how can I forget that? Cybersecurity, all of these things, and 3D printing. When these come together, one of the biggest challenges of this really is the amount of automation that will come in. And I speak about it as a challenge because there is an automatic displacement of human effort that will happen when a lot of this happens. Maybe not 1:1 correlation, but definitely there is a lot of displacement that will happen. So in this kind of a context, the way I think about partnerships is really how do you build an ecosystem where each entity is doing what they do best. There is going to be a lot of friction when these technologies are consumed because the consumer or even the business flows will get re-established. New players are entering. how do you keep it frictionless? How do you keep it smooth? In a world that is going digital, how do you make sure cyber risk is minimized? How can speed of transactions and seamlessness be introduced without necessarily increasing the cost of transactions? These are some of the practical challenges that definitely at Mastercard we think about. This is really how we think about it. The technologies will emerge. How do we seamlessly participate in it and make the experience of those that consume it much better? So we are a connector, we authenticate transactions, we keep expanding the network, which basically means connect more and more endpoints to it, and we keep the transactions moving while protecting the security of both the participants and the transaction itself. Long answer, but that's really how I think about this.
Awesome. That's a lot there. I mean, in what you call a long answer, there's a lot more that we've packed in there. Ganesh, what about you? What do you think?
I think the way we need to adopt digitalization, the way we effectively adopt digitalization should be based on the pain points we face today and the pain points we foresee in the future. We need to find partners and technologies that can solve these pain points and not adopt the technologies or the buzzwords just for the sake of adopting technologies or buzzwords. I think what we need to do is look at the pain points we face in the business. For example, why COVID was the biggest accelerator in digitalization, right? Is the best CIO the world has ever had. Many people have said, right? It's actually because we have a pain point, and then we realize that digitalization is important for that pain point to resolve that pain point, right? So what we need to see is we need to be able to look at the pain point we have today and in the future, right? Although it's difficult to estimate or difficult for us to anticipate that COVID would come about, is we should have adopted digitalization so that we're prepared for any risk that could happen in the future, and then find the relevant partners that could actually help us in resolving those pain points. One of the reasons why I invested in a group of ecosystem enablers, I've actually invested in about 15 ecosystem enablers under DotAsia and my other listed company in Australia, and invested within the e-commerce ecosystem, is because I saw SMEs need a lot of support to actually help them in succeeding to grow their sales online. So they needed the technologies to enable them to grow on marketplaces. They need the automation. There are now thousands, if not millions, of merchants on our leading marketplaces in the region. How do we put our local merchants ahead of some of these more foreign merchants? Is actually helping them in terms of capability, helping them in technology, and really putting it into one seamless ecosystem, as Rama mentioned earlier, right? And providing that as a one-stop solution to SMEs to succeed online.
Awesome. I mean, success, as you said, COVID is the best CIO the world has ever seen. It is hurling us into digital transformation. And the mom and pops who used to say things like, what I do is great. I don't need to change it for the next 50 years because there is no issue there. But that transformation has cost a lot, like what Rama was also alluding to. My next question is a little bit more in terms of when the whole world is in this. What are your thoughts on IT and security, especially in vendor building trust and resilience to enable digital transformation, not just in businesses? Please also know that a lot more users are coming, interacting financially, commerce, as well as personally on tech platforms. Ms. Rama.
All right, I get to go first every time, so that's a Ganesh has the advantage or the disadvantage on this. So a subject very close to both the heart of the company in which I work and me personally, because like you rightly said, Jasmine, security is only as strong as the security of the weakest link in that whole ecosystem in a digital world, right? Because any one entity that's participating can introduce risk. Now, today, the world actually, from a global sizing perspective, there is about a $5.2 trillion cyber breach problem that we think exists, right? Since pandemic, whereas COVID has been the best CIO, it's probably been one of the worst CIOs as well, because cyber attacks have increased by 49% since 2020. Because as many as there are smart people wanting to do good, there are smarter people wanting to make mischief as well, right? So there is a lot of energy that is invested in trying to break the transaction today. The other thing that we should think about is, when we talked about the Industrial Revolution, what is actually happening is there is this Internet of Things phenomenon that is happening, because everything that has a chip can be virtually connected to each other and is connected to each other. What does that really mean? It just means that the world has become much more vulnerable to attack and much more porous, right? The digital transformation is great when you look at the positive of it. On the challenge side, it definitely does make the world much more vulnerable to attacks. Now, what we are seeing in Asia Pacific is, we think, and Ganesh might have a better number, but we think the e-commerce revenue in Asia Pacific alone in the next 3 years will be maybe a 2 trillion plus kind of a number. With such a number, we are like a honeypot to the cyber criminals, right? So we should fully expect this to happen. Now, the other thing that you mentioned, I think, which is really important, is when you introduce SMEs, we have to understand that these are small, micro, medium enterprises which neither have the wherewithal, nor the talent, nor the exposure to managing cyber risk in a systemic way. So, how do you carry these entities onto the cyber journey and extend resilience across the ecosystem is definitely a big one. Obviously, in Singapore, for example, they have introduced an SMEs Go Digital program, where they have created a safer cyber source master plan 2020, where you can actually do cyber health screenings of your systems so that you know whether you're exposed or not. Government agencies are working. Security as a service platforms have been introduced so that SMEs can get the benefit without necessarily investing. So a ton of things, and I think Malaysia is also doing this, right? SMEs Go Digital by 2022, I think, is the plan there. So I feel for SMEs to go digital, we will have to help them manage cyber risk while simultaneously giving them the option to accept electronic payments, and support them on training and upskilling.
Thank you. Indeed. Ganesh, your thoughts?
Yeah, so I think we can divide your addressable audience that you mentioned into three. One is the individual, right? So what do? We as a consumer do when it comes to cybersecurity? And I think what we need to make sure is we need to actually encourage awareness, digital security awareness among the individual. We need to make sure that we need to understand the requirements for digital hygiene, right? Simple things like how you keep your password, how often you change your password, what type of applications you have in your mobile phone. So we need to have awareness among consumers to make sure that they adapt or they adopt, I would say, the best digital hygiene to ensure that they are secure against these potential cyber criminals. And then the second is actually the enterprises. enterprises need to invest in cybersecurity. They need to work with the best vendors, and they need to be prepared to actually invest in cybersecurity through ensuring they have, for example, the right C-level cybersecurity professionals, the right CISOs now, right? Chief Information Security Officers, to ensure that they're secure. They need to ensure that they work with the best vendors that ensure that their new digital services are secure, and they need to ensure that cybersecurity is put as an agenda all the way up to the board level. And the third is the SME. It's very difficult for SMEs, for you to expect, or for anybody to expect SMEs to actually adopt cybersecurity by themselves. It's already difficult enough for them to actually adopt digitalization. It's difficult enough for them to actually adopt e-commerce, to start selling online, to start growing online. And then you have to bring in this thing. You have to be careful about cybersecurity. It's a lot for them to actually take in. So what they need to ensure is that their service providers, now most SMEs today, when they actually adopt digitalization, they actually adopt digitalization through using cloud service providers. So they need to ensure that such cloud service providers have the highest level of security, and that these cloud service providers adopt or work with the best cybersecurity vendors. One of the things governments could do is actually, for example, have cybersecurity certification among cloud service providers first, followed by SMEs, for example, right? So governments can play a role in terms of certification, but it's really the cloud service providers that have to ensure that they actually put fences around the services they offer to ensure that their clients, the SMEs, are actually safely protected in the new normal. Right? So I hope that, yeah, go ahead, Rama.
The one thing though, Ganesh, in what you said, for an informed SME, this would be easy, right? So let's say the government does what they have to do and the cloud service provider does what they have to do. For an informed SME, this would be easy. I think the challenge, particularly in the ASEAN countries, is when you're trying to bring in so many micro entrepreneurs, the element of training them to understand what it takes to stay alive in the digital world, I think is also a very important initiative that maybe the government can take on in addition to what you said.
Ganesh is frozen. But you asked, I mean, you made that comment straight from my mind. Hi, Ganesh, you're back. A bit choppy. Oops. Oh, he dropped off. I think his internet is not okay. Ganesh, you are on now. Ganesh, you're on mute. Yeah.
I heard of half of what Rama was saying. I believe what's important, at least to answer half of your statement earlier, is what's important is actually awareness, right? You're right, it's not easy for an SME to understand what needs to be done. So that's where governments have to play a role. Governments have to play a role in terms of ensuring that cybersecurity awareness is there among all levels of society, whether consumers, whether SMEs, whether enterprises. We need to make sure that their best practices for all these different, I would say, stakeholders within the ecosystem, right? Yeah, I hope I helped answer or help respond to Rama's last statement.
Yeah.
You did, and without listening to me, you said exactly what I did. So we're all violently agreed.
We're all on the same page that
Yes.
that the SMEs and the reality is, and this is just a bit of intake for me, is micro SMEs, when they get onto the platform, these are not the things that they think about. And sometimes some platform need to charge out the security feature, and some platform is able to get a buy without as robust a security feature and therefore can reduce their cost a bit. And so how does the SMEs and the micro SMEs make that distinction if they are not aware that when they pay a small premium, it's almost like paying insurance and you're paying for a security guard to guard your store, which is now online. So these are the thoughts that I was thinking, how would we be able to share that SMEs would be able to partner to get this done? And as rightly pointed, the government has to step in to create the awareness and to also create perhaps a certain basic level of cyber security on all transaction and operating platform and certification of that, as Ganesh had pointed out. Right. So let's go to data. In terms of partnership, SMEs play a huge role and they are collecting data of individual users that come onto their platform. And they are also new in this. What are your views on the infrastructural support, data analytics and marketing, and also customer acquisition to help SMEs scale their businesses further? Ganesh, you can go first this time.
Sure. So I think, look, succeeding online is all about growth. And I think to succeed online, SMEs need to understand this phrase that startups from the Silicon Valley have been using for a long, long time, the phrase product market fit, right? What's very important for SMEs to understand is, in the old days, we look at selling a product through retail, your key success factor to selling a product over retail is really location, location, location. You sell a mineral water in the right location, you'll be successful. You sell a mineral water in the wrong location, you will fail, right? But when you actually start selling a product online, location is no longer a key success factor. So what becomes your key success factor is really your product market fit. What product you have that caters for the right market. And you need to find your niche online because your competitor online is just a click away. So you have to find your unique selling proposition and niche to ensure that you succeed online. Once you have found it, then you can basically focus on marketing and looking at your data and whatnot to ensure that you can then grow on that product market fit. If you look at Facebook, when they first started, was it 10, 15 years ago now, right? They didn't start from launching a social network for the masses. They started with launching a social network for colleges. In fact, they limited their access to certain colleges. I think it was Stanford at first, where Mark came from, right? And then they slowly opened it up. Even if you look at Clubhouse, when they started, they didn't start with 2 apps. They actually started first with iPhone because they wanted the more premium or the more knowledgeable users first to join it. And then later they open up. So we always need to find our product market fit. And how we find that product market fit is look at the data, look at who our customer base is, look at what customers we've been serving, and then focus on the customers that we can serve best, see where online they are, and then focus on marketing to our next potential customers where they are online, right? It's about market discovery, finding who your ideal customer is. It's about market messaging, getting the right message to the consumer. It's about market outreach, sending that message to the right consumer at the right place, and finally looking at the feedback and recycling and cycling to find your ultimate product market fit to build a successful business and online and growing.
Thank you. It's true. Product niche, know who you are shooting for, and work that land, right? Rama.
So I first of all, I mean, Ganesh is probably the best expert you can get on the SME subject. So completely, all of those points are super relevant in building a business. let me take the aspect of operating the business on an ongoing basis and perhaps address this question, right? To scale a business like this beyond the product fit and beyond knowing who your ideal customer is, reach is become one of the biggest challenges for growth, right? And in a digital world, I think reach is both an opportunity and a risk, because at least on the high street, when you set up a shop, you know that when the customers walk through the street, who else is competing with you? In the digital world, you have absolutely no idea who's competing with you and whose products are better, unless finding that out becomes your core business. So for me, I think the challenges that need to be addressed for SMEs is the lack of access to what I call the growth driving tools, which is how do you create a presence in multiple e-commerce platforms that are beyond the borders in which you operate, so that you have created the widest possible addressable base and find the maximum number of consumers, right? So that's one. The second thing, really, from an operating perspective, is when you operate in multiple virtual markets, the rules, regulations of these markets and the conventions are very different. Finding partnerships that can help you navigate that becomes important, because that's not your core competence. Your core competence should be to build the product, right? And the third one really is for smaller micro enterprises. One of the challenges of growth is the obligations of governance and the obligations of taxes and bookkeeping and everything else that comes with it. And how do you create embedded platforms where they don't need to worry about these things, but it actually helps them to seamlessly grow? So growth driving tools is one big one. I think I did not hear Ganesh mention finance, access to finance, but you talked about data. One of the big opportunities that I believe will play out in the future is if data can seamlessly come through multiple platforms which see different parts of what the consumer or the buyer does, then credit access to micro enterprises is probably one of the biggest emerging opportunities and needs, quite frankly, because if you really need to ignite, then that needs to be attended. Beyond that, of course, I'm in Mastercard, and I must say to you, keeping payments simple and easy and secure for SMEs has to be the bottom line.
Did you have any comment? I think you had something you wanted to say.
No, I think I totally agree that credit is important. I just wanted to touch a bit on, there's a new trend actually that's coming into the whole cloud and SME segment, or cloud for SMEs. Is this term that I call CRM to ERP. Right? Digitalization is not just about the channel anymore. Before, I was selling on the marketplace or selling on the web stores, right? Today, it's about linking your customer all the way through the channel right down to the ERP. That makes sense, right? So a new trend that we'll actually be seeing, I believe, over the next 3, 4, 5 years is really this CRM to ERP, right? Ensure there's a seamless connectivity from the customer right down to your back end, right down to your accounting system through your channels. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I mean, and that's where your channel takes care of your taxes. Hopefully that channel also takes care of your stock inventory, telling you when to reorder raw materials for production. So, but that sounds expensive. That sounds really expensive. So
I think just to add to that, Jasmine, I think historically it was expensive, but today with cloud and because everything is digital right now, it may not be as expensive when you work with ecosystem partners that are able to provide the solution to you in a very cost-effective and seamless manner. In the old days, it would be SAP and whatnot that's very expensive, but today it may not be as expensive with digitalization and cloud as it was before.
Jasmine, if I can give an example of how costs may have got democratized, at least at the edge. So, for example, if an SME wanted to go digital earlier, they would need to set up the shop physically, digitally, put in the payments, integrate it with their back-end inventory, stock management system, all of those things. If you think about two things that have happened as the digitization has happened, one is even for physical payments, right? Your device, everybody has a phone, and that phone has now become an instrument of payment acceptance, right? Because you can as well tap the card on the phone and the payment is done, or scan it and it's done, right? So the phone as a point of sale device, what we call soft POS, has become one such democratizer of costs, if you like. On the virtual side, you can also see there are lots of service providers who offer payment gateways, where for a fraction of the cost, they set up a shop for you, okay? And in 2 days, you're ready and you can go. You have not invested in the entire backend that it takes to get yourself going. So, at an ecosystem level, from where I sit, I definitely see, and the SMEs may not know this. The problem is, how do you make them understand what is available to them, right? That is definitely an education challenge, but there are lots of these platforms that they should ideally use instead of trying to build it all themselves.
agreed, agreed. And you know, CRM to ERP may not be something that SMEs have any inkling on. To start, teach them about cybersecurity would be a challenge in itself. And then to move on to this other level would be something else altogether. And that whole awareness, that's, I think, the hinder or the delay in the journey of adoption, I believe. I'd like to ask the next question with regards to something a little newer. I mean, we all know that BNPL is coming into the region, so to speak, in Malaysia. And BNPL, to me, is a huge bonus for SMEs, but a problem for consumers. And the partnerships that are happening between SMEs and the BNPL, I would also like a little bit of your observation as to how that is taking off, since we're talking about partnership in the digital economy and a little bit on the finance side of things. So this is very much at the forefront for the region right now. Maybe Rama, you'd like to start this one?
Sure. Every few years, there is a phenomenon that emerges. BNPL is now the global phenomenon, right? It's not just in Malaysia. Our research shows that about 43% of consumers in the region, they are willing to increase their spending if they had BNPL as an option, right? That's a very big statement. Now, clearly, we think, so from our perspective, we are obviously committed to facilitating this new trend at a network level because, if a customer wants to pay in installments, we should be able to facilitate that without the merchant necessarily needing to do a whole lot more. That's conceptually where we are headed. From a trend perspective, I do believe that you used an interesting turn of phrase. You said it's a problem for the consumers. I'm not sure why it is a problem for the consumers, because you're just making it easier for them to take a decision. It's a problem definitely from a merchant perspective if they want to offer it, how to implement, who should be their BNPL service provider, and do they need one BNPL service provider? Do they need multiple? There are a few decisions to make from a merchant perspective, but from a consumer perspective, as transactions go, once they get asked the question virtually or in real time, or physically, do you want to pay later, do you want to pay in 4 or do you want to pay in 6, and they make their mind. Now, the way we think about this is for new to credit customers, okay? And this is definitely across the region a huge population. For new to credit consumers, BNPL is a good way to demonstrate to bureaus that their credit behavior is good, right? Because then they keep moving up the credit curve in terms of being eligible for more and more credit offtake, whether as an SME or whether as a pure consumer. That is definitely the principle that we are seeing. From a trend perspective, I believe it is here to stay. Now you can argue what will happen if all the youth of today get so used to BNPL purchasing that the fiscal prudence of purchasing becomes in itself a casualty, but that's a moralistic debate. From a transaction perspective, I think BNPL is here to stay.
Thank you. Ganesh, would love to hear, especially the SME point of view as well.
Yeah, no, I think it's. I think if BNPL is right now a big ask from SMEs that want to grow their sales, right? Because conversion from customers visiting your website or visiting your marketplace to actually generate sales, that conversion has actually increased or will increase if you actually adopt BNPL. Right, so we see a lot from our merchants, from 100,000 merchants. We see a lot of requests for BNPL today, and so it's something that definitely we are looking at, and we're also looking at offering to our merchants. I guess what needs to be done is how do we do it as seamlessly as possible, right? Because today I still believe that BNPL, we're in the early days. The whole process of approving the transaction is still not as seamless as what it could be or should be.
Thank you. Thank you. We have a question from the audience. Oh, my bad. Let me just quickly say BNPL is buy now, pay later, because I just went straight into terminology. Apologies to the audiences. So we were discussing the buy now, pay later concept earlier. Now, the one question from the audience. True, in this digital space, the reach is utmost important. How does one maximize the time space the audience will spend going to your page or website? So basically eyeballs. Maybe Ganesh, you'd like to take this one.
Yeah, I think I kind of answered that question in my previous statement, right? You need to get to the point. You need to understand what your customer, who your customer is. You need to understand what he wants, and you need to catch him when he comes to your website with the messaging that is most relevant to him, so that he takes the next step in the user journey that you want him to take. Right? So to do that, you need to understand your customer and you need to catch him as soon as possible so that he takes the next step, right? The next conversion step towards what you want him to do in the end, which tends to be transaction or then tends to make the purchase. And it just so happened that buy now, pay later is one of those steps that will actually help him stay longer and actually get him to the point or get the consumer to the point that you want the consumer to act on, which is to purchase.
So, okay, this question is just a follow-up from that, and I would like Ms. Rama to also get in on this one. The question is, so are you suggesting that the buy now, pay later becomes part of your advertising page versus as being tagged onto your checkout page? Then we're going to go into my moralistic streak. But I would like to hear this from you, Ganesh, in terms of, because you're saying that if you offer the buy now pay later on the front of the page, that would hook more customers in, and that's if I'm hearing you right.
It depends on who your customer is and what they want, right? So I'm not going to answer that question directly, whether you want to put it on the front page or at the transaction page. You need to use the data that you've collected. You may need to A/B testing, for example, to see whether putting it at the back or at the front actually increases your transactions. And you could, for example, work with a buy now, pay later provider to see whether in the end, when you put it in front, whether the person ends up paying or not. You get what I mean?
Yes.
So this is where what I mentioned earlier, that a more seamless transaction is needed in the buy now, pay later, so that we're able to understand customer behavior better as buy now, pay later is actually implemented to consumers within the region. We still don't know enough of what behavior or what the behavior of our consumers are, all the way from visiting a website to actually making their payments on time, right? So we need to understand the data better to be able to answer that question. But I think merchants are able to test themselves, to A/B testing, to see where is actually a better place to actually make those transactions.
I think, Ms. Rama, you may have a little inkling as to some of the data that Ganesh may need.
So I will say two things, right? One is this notion that you wait for the consumer to come to your website to get into this thinking of where to place the buy now, pay later advertisement. We may want to challenge that itself, because you go fetch a consumer. You don't wait for the consumer to come to you, okay? Which basically means the intervention of catching that fish is in a space that you don't even control, okay? So let me give you an example. Facebook, from starting as a Stanford College club site, to it becoming the largest social media platform, to becoming potentially one of the largest global SME marketplaces, right? There is a certain drift that is happening here. When you are in the midst of a social conversation around something, is a placement opportunity, right? That smart data management, analytic tools, and the right platforms can provide you. And it's almost then that you catch a consumer, because you got to get them hooked, if you want to sell. Now, I'm not getting into the right thing, wrong thing debate, because that's not the point, right? From a commerce perspective, you got to catch them early when there is sentiment. The next stage on that is there may be a few players offering the same product, okay? How do you get them early, and how do you move them to your product website or to your market, front, is really the game that needs to be played out. So to me, this is less a debate about at checkout or at on the home page, and much more about when do you intervene, where all do you intervene, and how do you intervene is probably the big question. And the judgment call on who do you sell to, BNPL or not, is a game of data that will get played out. And I agree with Ganesh, this has just started. And the biggest game that we have seen on this is really in Australia, perhaps, right? Where the market behaves very differently. There is merchant bilaterals that have happened. There is data that's been built up in the market. So they probably have a better view on how to do this. The rest of the other markets, other than perhaps India and Australia, are still on the learning curve on this one.
Thank you. Thank you. Wow, look at the time. I have time for one last question, and it will be open to the two of you. Ms. Rama, you said something with regards to reach them at the emotion, where emotions are rich for, I guess, some form of harvesting. Nowhere on the cyberspace does gaming is the place where emotion is the highest. And how do you interact the digital economy with the gaming economy? I mean, within the gaming environment, there is already economy transactions happening, in-apps purchases, even exchanges between gamers, between each other. So maybe Ganesh, you'd like to start with this one.
Sure, it's something that I'm quite aware of. I'm not sure whether you all were aware, but MOL actually started our journey from the gaming environment, right?
Yes.
So MOL Points, which was MOL's first gaming credits, now called Razer Gold, actually grew first and actually had much more volumes than our e-commerce payment gateway MOL Pay, simply because gaming actually was the first place where our consumers in this region were actually willing to pay for. If you look at the biggest companies across all emerging markets, biggest internet companies across all emerging markets, you find that they started from the gaming environment, from the gaming industry. Look at Sea, which owns Shopee, started from Garena, which is a gaming publisher. Tencent was a gaming publisher, right? Started from gaming. Kakao, which today owns a fintech bank, their first revenue drivers was actually gaming, right? So gaming is the first kind of medium or the first applications where people actually paid for across emerging markets, right? And the reason why is because people are willing to pay for entertainment. Even today, as you look at the next generation of e-commerce, live commerce, people actually are buying products because they like to be entertained. Especially in today's environment where people have a lot of time on their hands looking on their handphones and computers because they can't travel. They want to be entertained through their handphones, that they don't mind spending money. That money that they had for traveling is now spent on stuff like live commerce, right? So I think entertainment, just to answer that question, entertainment is a core part, not just gaming, but overall entertainment will be a core part of driving the next generation of transactions online. I hope that helped answer that question, your question.
Well, yes, and then I got more, but that may be a different conversation offline. Rama.
So I was wondering, first of all, when you will get to it, Jasmine, just knowing where you come from, I think gaming was always going to be a part of this. See, no doubts at all that gaming is probably the next big frontier for us as a payment network company to perhaps participate in, for a couple of reasons. Definitely the opportunity size of the transactions that are going back and forth is increasing. If anything, COVID has only made it even that much more better, because what do you do when you don't go travel? You sit and game, right? So we've seen that. But it is also a vector of opportunity, if you like, and as a part of my role, one of the things that I look at definitely is new industry vectors, and where is there an expansion possibility. Gaming, I have had to confess, perhaps with my advanced age, I'm trying to learn how the minds of the young think and how do they operate, what are the platforms that you should be there. So we are on a bit of a learning curve, but there are two things that we are doing. One, it opens us up to a population demographic, which is perhaps very different from a mature banking customer, right? So, and therefore, how we engage with this population and what makes for the right kind of payment experience is something that is absolutely doable. The second thing, we are a network. Now, what I have understood is there is different kinds of currencies in the gaming world, and people buy these currencies and they don't mind spending a lot of it to build a nicer house virtually, or to, you know, buy a cat or a dog or whatever, right? And so, you know, that exchange of transactions is something that today is not on a payment. Much of it is not on a payment network because there are micro transactions, small transactions happen through wallets. To Ganesh's example, everybody who was a gaming company introduced a wallet to fund that transaction. So that is definitely an opportunity for us to intervene. The third one, really, if I may, is I think there is a exchange of points. You collect gaming points, you should be able to use it to buy something else. You buy something, you should be able to use the loyalty rewards to game, right? So there is an interface between the real world and the gaming world that also feels like the future.
Definitely is. And, you know, actually they prefer to buy bigger guns and nicer skin. Well, that's what they're doing right now mostly. So closing words. I mean, gaming is definitely it, and that's why I'm in there. But closing words, Ganesh.
Wow, you caught me there. I didn't know we needed closing words.
Well, just
No,
a comment.
yeah, I think what's important about growth is not, it's a given. Today there's so many cloud services out there that it's very easy to find the right technology to suit you. What you really need to focus on is how you grow your business. It's about finding product market fit. It's about understanding your data. It's about understanding your customer. As Rama rightly pointed out, you have to go and catch your customer, not wait for the customer to come to you. So I think the biggest issues that are faced today by SMEs is not just the technology, it's really about growth and also cybersecurity, which needs government intervention and awareness to also help.
Thank you. Ms. Rama?
Sure. Go digital. Digital is good. You will build your business and scale, but also global connectivity is important, and understanding how to scale your business from the narrow borders where you are and reach the widest possible audience is the challenge that you want to navigate. And there is a world of opportunity out there.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you both. Fantastic panel session. Thank you for indulging me with some of the off-the-cuff that I've thrown at you. And I hope for the audiences out there that you have caught a little bit of digital gold from these two wonderful panelists and the advices that they've shared with us. Now I close the session and I pass the time back to Hashrul. Hashrul, over to you. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you, Jasmine, Rama, and Ganesh for the engaging and interesting discussion on the way forward in digital economy to start our morning. Wonderful discussion. To the attendees, maybe you want to watch it again later on, but no problem. So we will now be moving forward to our next session of the day. It will begin very shortly. Do click join session and complete a survey for each session for us to continuously serve you better. Okay, see you in a bit.